If you catch yourself talking out loud when you're stressed, you aren't losing your mind. You're actually executing an incredibly sophisticated cognitive survival tool. But society tells us the silent thinker is the composed one. If someone catches you muttering in the grocery aisle or pacing your kitchen having a debate with the air, honestly, it's humiliating. You freeze. You feel like you're cracking under pressure. We're taught that keeping a complex problem trapped inside a silent mind is the ultimate sign of being in control. Consider the physics of that assumption. Keeping chaos contained doesn't solve it. It just pressurizes it. Why do the smartest people look completely unhinged when they're alone? Because trying to process modern anxiety entirely in your head is a critical engineering failure. Look at how aerospace engineers test a supersonic wind tunnel. The air inside is moving fast enough to tear metal apart, but it's completely invisible. The scale model is shaking violently under the pressure. The engineers can't fix what they can't see. If they let the test run blindly, the structural integrity of the model will fail. So, they execute a deliberate override. They inject a thick, continuous stream of white smoke directly into the chamber. Instantly, the invisible turbulence materializes into a hard, trackable physical line. They're forcing the chaos to reveal its exact shape. Right now, the cognitive load on high achievers is unprecedented. Between artificial intelligence threatening your industry and relentless daily notifications, your brain is processing an invisible, supersonic data stream. You were trained to handle this silently. You grew up in environments that rewarded quiet compliance, where looking out of control was dangerous. So you learned to swallow the panic. Internal anxiety operates like that invisible turbulence. The brain shakes under the heavy cognitive load, but because the thoughts are abstract, it can't locate the source of the drag. Let's look at what this actually costs when you don't deploy a release valve. You're sitting in your car after a brutal meeting. The engine is off. The steering wheel is hot under your hands. You're staring at the dashboard, completely silent, while a massive spreadsheet of failures loops in your head. You're physically paralyzed by the sheer volume of unspoken variables. You don't say a word because your identity is built on being the fixer, the one who never needs help. The refusal to speak isn't about looking composed. It's about the fear that needing help makes you a liability. You just go back to staring at the windshield, pretending the noise isn't there. Which brings us to what's actually happening when you finally speak. According to the National Institutes of Health, nearly 96% of American adults have an internal monologue. But keeping that monologue strictly internal during a high-pressure event is a strategic mistake. Thoughts trapped inside the dark space of the skull remain abstract. They overlap. They loop endlessly without resolution. They degrade into a toxic mental static that Dr. Ethan Kross refers to as chatter. The moment you vocalize a problem, you deploy the Aerodynamic Smoke-Wand. By forcing abstract thoughts through your physical vocal cords, you take an invisible fear and materialize it into a physical, acoustic sound wave. You push the data out into the room, letting the sound wave strike your own eardrums and catch it back through the auditory cortex, the part of your brain responsible for processing sound. Harvard Medical School suggests this acoustic injection tends to improve memory retention and preserve your executive function. Your brain's ability to plan is shielded from overwhelm, likely because you force your neural pathways to render the data twice. Using this internal dialogue strategy out loud can upgrade your overall brain performance by up to 30%. The Quarterly Journal of Experimental Psychology found that simply repeating the name of an object out loud tends to help a person find it significantly faster in a cluttered space. It primes your visual system. This is why muttering, "Where are my keys?" while tearing apart your desk actually works. You're converting phantom anxiety into a calibrated, trackable data stream. But speaking out loud only works if you use one highly precise pronoun. I'll show you the exact word in a minute, but first, you have to understand the friction point. When you silently think, I'm overwhelmed, I can't finish this project. You own the panic. It becomes your identity. You're succumbing entirely to the emotional gravity of the moment. Let's look at how elite athletes handle this under pressure. During one of the most highly scrutinized career transitions in sports history, LeBron James publicly explained his massive decision by stating he was doing what was best for LeBron James. He didn't say me. He didn't say I. He used his own name. When you speak to yourself in the third person, you step back. Distance creates clarity. The University of Michigan conducted research on this exact tactic, known as distance self-talk, which just means talking to yourself using your own name, as if you were giving advice to a friend. The evidence points in this direction. This habit often helps physically lower heart rates and drop cortisol levels. It shifts activity away from the reactive, fearful amygdala and routes it toward the rational, problem-solving prefrontal cortex. You execute a telemetry decoupling. You step out of the crashing cockpit and become the flight director in the control room. The crisis stops being an emotional threat to your survival and becomes a logistical puzzle. Your shoulders drop. You open the laptop. You type the first word. But here is where a massive percentage of people get it wrong. Talking out loud fails when it's used to narrate the crash. If you're pacing the room saying, "Why is everything going wrong?" you're just documenting the impact. The Cleveland Clinic draws a hard line between productive self-instruction and negative rumination. That is rumination, getting stuck in a repetitive loop of negative thoughts. Venting out loud without offering a solution is just reading the black box recording while the ground approaches. Effective self-talk isn't a diary entry, and it certainly isn't a cliché daily affirmation. It's a stall recovery sequence. To pull your nervous system out of a psychological stall, you vocalize strict, cold, mechanical next steps. John, put the phone down. Open the laptop. Type one single sentence. You give your brain just enough distance to figure out the next step. You're no longer a passive victim of a relentless environment. You're actively reclaiming your attention. You're selectively externalizing your thoughts to the one person who actually needs to hear them. You reserve these spoken thoughts for the person who will always listen, yourself. This is why you talk to yourself in the shower to build encouragement for the day or mutter self-criticism after making a mistake. You're running a three-step audit. You notice your tone, you use the third-person hack, and you externalize the goal setting. The internal monologue is just a rough, chaotic draft. The spoken word is the final edit. Drop the shame of being caught talking to yourself in the empty boardroom. You aren't a frantic person losing your grip on reality. You're an elite test director deliberately injecting smoke into the wind tunnel. You're mastering the aerodynamics of your own mind. Stop narrating the crash. Fly the plane.